Have you ever had the situation where you ask for a perception check, the first player rolls, and then every other player at the table asks to roll the check after seeing that the first roll was low? Today I'm going to talk about DM tips I have to help resolve this phenomenon at your table. This method is going to set up the idea of the roll, what it means narratively, and then we're going to discuss making skill checks when you as the DM may not have an answer for what they're looking for. These are DM tips for rolling skill checks. So you have a group traveling through the woods, and one player wants to look behind them and see if someone is following them. They roll a 7, and immediately every player at the table wants to do the same thing. Well, we need to identify what exactly is going on here. It may be that the rest of the players just simply feel that that player just gave you as the DM an idea. That idea being that, oh, there could be someone following the party. And now immediately every player becomes nervous. They also see the low roll and feel that they too are keeping watch and that they deserve a check to see what they see, to see if they can perceive this potential threat. If you want to stop this outright, you can simply give the table a structure for resolving mechanical checks. At my table, I discourage players from saying, "Can I make a perception check to see if," and then whatever they're trying to see. And instead just ask them to tell me what they're doing. I want to look behind the cart. Are we being followed? What about what's in the woods? Can I see something there? You can, at the start of any scene, just ask to roll a perception check. Often at the start of any camp scene, I ask every player to give me a perception check to cover their watch. Then I run through the scenes and my narrative isn't interrupted by make a perception check, which make a perception check often means, is there something to perceive? By just having the perception check at the start of the night, I don't need to telegraph that they might have missed something or not. And this same method can be used to cover travel during the day. It's important to understand that if a player rolls low, that does not mean that their character is incompetent. It just may mean that there's something preventing them from succeeding. This includes that there may be nothing there in the first place. If the PC was looking to the left of the cart and rolled a 7, maybe the bandits were about to attack from the right side of the cart. This low roll indicating that the PC observed the fact that there was nothing to see, but was just looking in the wrong direction. And had he looked right instead of left, they would have seen the bandits. If a player rolls low and you treat it as incompetency, then it drives the RP in that direction. I recently had a discussion about disguise kits, and I feel the results of that conversation shed light on skill checks in general. The complaint was, if you make a disguise and you roll low, what's stopping them from just trying again? This is actually the exact same problem as one party member failing a check and another player trying to make the follow-up check to try and cover the low roll. Before I ask for any check, I always ask what it's trying to resolve. What's the conflict? I don't just ask for a roll because that's the thing to do. If given enough time and material, a person proficient in disguises should be able to make a decent disguise. Sure, they might mess something up along the way, but they're skilled. They're going to correct those errors, and the final product should be a proper finished product. Someone capable of making a beautiful dress one minute will not produce and be satisfied with a terrible outfit the next. They're going to scrap whatever they're doing long before a finished product is made, and if they have plenty of time and the correct materials, I just have the character succeed. They are competent. They are proficient in making disguises, and it allows the character to shine. However, what if they are pushed for time or they don't have the right materials? We see this often in cooking shows when they put a clock on the contestants. Chefs that are very skilled sometimes make bad errors just because they have a clock intensifying the pressure to succeed. And in many cases, simply delaying another minute would have made their dishes just as good as the others. Narratively, this is what would happen with those disguise checks. You were rushed for time and you made a good disguise. However, there may be a flaw. Even with a roll of 7, you can still have them make a good finished product. It doesn't mean it's trash, or it doesn't have to be something that belongs in the shredder. A roll of 7 could mean that you realize that you could finish the design, but you need more time, or it could mean that the stitching on the left sleeve is unraveling. But how does that resolve conflict? A low roll does not mean you don't succeed, but what do you give up to succeed? You can't finish the design in time, so either you need more time or you need to rush on something. Then you can just ask the player, what does the PC do to save time? In this way, you've created a little puzzle for the player to solve. The other potential conflict is material. What if that low roll means that there's a very specific blue in the disguise that's hard to match? It's discovered that the blue comes from a special flower that grows on the snow-capped mountains nearby. They have access to a similar blue in the marketplace, and it looks like it might work, so the players decide to go ahead with the questionable materials. They have more than enough time this time to finish it, but the conflict now is the material. Now the dice roll can determine how that conflict is resolved. A low roll being that there's a problem with the material. They might need to invest more material to complete the disguise, or they might need just a different amount or more money. Or maybe there was some material that the PC didn't realize that they needed or they didn't account for. They can still complete this disguise, but there's a problem, and honestly, how do the players resolve it? But what if it was a natural one? If the time is conflict, the date for the meeting that they're trying to attend might be moved. So if the time's the conflict, the date is shortened, and now they don't have as much time as they thought they did to finish this disguise. Maybe the location is moved from the church to the castle, and now the disguise that they're trying to use to enter the church is not going to work in the castle. They got to start over. If materials are the conflict, then maybe that shade of blue will work. However, in the sunlight, it washes out and it becomes clear that the color is not correct. So you have to stay in dark areas at all times, and if the sunlight hits you, somebody can look at you and clearly see that you're not wearing the right color. Or you're going to have to go to those mountains and retrieve that flower to make it work. This gives the players choices to resolve the errors, rather than making their character seem incompetent. This process is a technique I use where I allow the dice to determine reality. If someone asks, do I see a bird in the trees? I ask them to roll a perception check, and if they roll low, there is no bird. If they roll high, maybe there is a bird. If the 4 other players try to roll perception checks to find this mysterious bird, I might actually have the table roll, hoping one person succeeds or rolls even a natural 20. In that moment, I will describe that they look around very carefully for the next hour and find no bird. Then I'm going to explain that the conflict was the character trying to locate something. Rolling low wasn't necessarily not seeing the bird that was there, but instead whether or not the bird was there in the first place. This is one of several techniques I have to resolve a perception check, and you might not know which one I'm using. I do not intend on having PC after PC roll to determine if they spot something. I will explain to the table that I do not intend to engage in the practice of having the entire table make checks until someone succeeds. If that PC looks for something without telling the rest of the group, then it's possible that I'm using their check to determine to see if the group spots anything, or it might be that I'm using that check to determine the reality of, is there something there at all? The narrative reality is going to be determined by the first person to ask for something. Either the bandits they're looking for aren't there, or they're too well hidden to see. Either way, I'm not inclined to waste a bunch of time by having PCs try to cover up low die rolls just for the sake of rolling better than the previous person. My players have figured out that they get dice rolls if they all announce their actions and then all roll at the same time. If they're all checking for bandits, I might ask them which direction that they're all looking, and each player rolls to determine how well they saw the right side of the wagon, how well they see behind them, and how well they see maybe in front of them. And each die roll has a purpose. This organized structure can help you keep a narrative flow and not stop and start the narrative while each PC tries to outdo one another. The die roll has a time and place, and once you're past that time, it's simply too late to notice that the brief second that something would have been revealed to you. The bandit only stepped out for a second, and in that second, the first character had a chance to notice, and that the follow-up attempts simply couldn't have seen what they could have seen. I really hope this video helps someone out who may be getting frustrated with the idea of what dice rolls are. Trying to tie a narrative to the dice is something I've been working on for a long time, and so far, my players seem to be enjoying it. The next idea on the subject of dice rolls is when to call for a check. Should you always allow a perception check, a persuasion check, an insight or deception check? And I'm going to discuss that more in a later video, but for now, our time's done, and I'll see you next time.